Welcome everybody to this month's GlugNet. For those who do not know me, my name is Stephen Ball and I'm the president of GlugNet. Tonight we are pleased to have Samuel Gomez join us, who will be telling us how to make our applications smarter using Azure AI Services. But before we get started with that and a lightning talk this evening, let's learn a little more about GlugNet. We are the Greater Lansing user group for .NET developers based out of Okemos, Michigan. Our meetings are free and open to the public and held on the third Thursday of every month. The best way to find out more about upcoming meetings is to visit our meetup page, meetup.com/glugnet. A few housekeeping items tonight. As I mentioned, we are pleased to be joined by Kostas Georgiou, all the way from Greece, who will be doing a lightning talk this evening. If you are interested in giving a lightning talk, please let either Joe Conk or myself know, and we will get you slotted into a meeting. During tonight's presentation, we want this to be an interactive experience for everybody. So please feel free to unmute yourself, ask any questions, or answer any questions that our speakers may have of us. We also have the ability to receive questions through the chat in GoToMeeting, which I will be monitoring. If you are uncomfortable speaking up, that's a good option. Otherwise, we just ask that you please stay muted. That way we can all hear and enjoy the presentation. At the conclusion of tonight's presentation, we will have an anonymous survey available to all attendees. Your feedback is very much appreciated in that. It is summarized and sent to our speaker so that they can improve their presentation going forward. So we would greatly appreciate if you would please give your feedback at the end. Our sponsors this evening are NIS Technologies, who is providing us this GoToMeeting session, and the .NET Foundation, who helps pay the bills for the organization. Our meetups are recorded and posted to YouTube by Sam Nasser. You can get to his channel either using the QR code here on the screen or going to youtube.com/@SamNasserMVP. Additionally, if you like this user group, some other groups in the area that you might be interested in, the Cleveland C# user group. My apologies, Sam, I keep forgetting to update the name of your group on here. The Greater Lansing area for SQL Server, the .NET Study Group, and if you are in the Southfield, Michigan area, I suggest you check out mi.net. They are only in person though, so you have to be local for that one. Okay. With that, I will turn it over to Kostas, who will be giving us a lightning talk.
At first, I want to thank you, Joe and Stephen, for the invitation and for having me here. Kostas Georgiou from Greece. I'm a co-founder of Missionware. Give me a moment. So you can see my screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So as I told you, I'm a co-founder of Missionware, and today I will show you how software engineers can become super productive and innovate faster. Nowadays, software projects are always completed on time and on budget, correct? I mean, with all this technology out there, AI, big data, cloud services, great programming frameworks, with agile methodologies and DevOps tools, with all this knowledge available on internet, I guess projects should succeed most of the times. Or not. Sorry, the truth is that most of the times they fail or delay. Over budget, over time, technical depth, difficulty to adapt to change requirements. Has anybody of you faced such issues? I think we all been there. This is where Cognibase can help. It all started by this wise guy. He has over 35 years of experience in software and system engineering. He was involved as technical lead and project manager in various critical operations projects. These projects had demanding requirements like real-time data dissemination and support for seamless collaborative operations under harsh conditions. He understood that many things could go wrong and the risk is too high when you build systems in markets like defense and security. So he decided to start designing and developing a framework that could help him on building such critical systems easier. Vasilis put all his wisdom in it and Cognibase came to life. Cognibase has many years of R&D and is used in production environments since 2010. In 2020, and while the new cross-platform.NET was evolving, we thought that Cognibase would be useful to others, so we started to plan for a public release. Cognibase was used to build a highway maintenance management system for a Greek highway operator. A single non-senior developer built it in 6 months. He built a robust, tailor-made application that still serves their needs. It was also used to build a powerful security information management system. This project integrates the state of thousands of sensors, video cameras, systems like video and building management. A huge project for sure. This is when we met with Vasilis and Ford Missionware. I worked on building the Internet of Things like engine on top of Cognibase. With Cognibase, it's easy to build multi-service backends, so we built multiple gateways, as you can see, that fuse data from different subsystems. There is also an automation agent that executes the automation rules and 3 types of UI applications. Desktop for the command center, tablet for the field forces vehicles, and the command center video wall. The project went smooth with Cognibase. Someone can consider Cognibase as the enterprise Firebase. It has many enterprise features and is much more flexible. By saying Firebase, I mean the database part because Firebase is quite large ecosystem. By using Cognibase, a developer can become super productive and write less code. So eventually he can be succeeded in the projects and be cost effective. Now let's deep dive in the Cognibase technology. Cognibase is a powerful real-time object server accompanied with client components. It will help you build any type of application using your favorite framework, .NET, and your favorite tools, like Visual Studio. But how does it work? It's quite easy and similar to Entity Framework Core. You write your entity classes, you perform edits in these entities, and the change tracker detects the changes while you save the change set. Then the object server processes the transaction and persits the data into the database. How does Cognibase work? It is quite easy and similar to Entity Framework Core. So you write the entity classes You perform edits in the entities, and the change tracker detects the changes while you save the changeset. Then the object server processes the transaction and persists the data into the database. In the server side starts the magic. After processing the transaction, the server publishes the transaction back to the clients. Then the clients synchronize the changes of the transaction into their current internal state. The internal state of the client remains almost always consistent and conflict-free, and there is no need to continuously go to the server to fetch the new state. Additionally, this permits for advanced features like live queries, or in other words, auto-updating collections. Cognibase is a unique technology as it combines the simplicity of using an object-oriented layer similar to ORM, the automatic synchronization of state across all processes, and all this against any platform that supports or will support .NET. We have prepared some examples as minimal as possible so you can get started quickly. Please give them a try. Here is our team. We have been designing and building applications for many years using .NET. And here is where we are now. We have just soft launched as a beta version. The platform will be free, so it is convenient for anyone to use for any purpose. We will charge from premium support, and we will work slowly towards pricing model based also on the feedback from the users. We would love to hear your opinion on this. Finally, what about the future? We want to offer a fully managed service in addition to the self-hosted one, so someone can use Cognibase instead of Firebase or other platforms and have the option to go from self-hosted to managed and vice versa, or even build hybrid scenarios. We also plan to support Unity soon and WebAssembly when multi-threading will come to Blazor. So that's it from me. We ask for your help. If you could please schedule a meeting with us to find out if Cognibase can help you, or at least we could exchange useful experience and ideas. Thank you for your attention, and we are here for any questions.
Thank you so much, Kostas. Any questions for him?
No questions. You did mention that it's free and that you're looking at a pricing model. I do want to mention that as a consultant, I like tools that I can pay for once for a client, so that I want to be able to pay per project as an option at least.
Yeah, this is what we are thinking, the pay per project with a reasonable price, and but probably subscription based.
Right. So if I have a client and I want to use this tool for the client in the future, I can go to a client and say, hey, we want to use this tool. It's $500 one time, and then whatever code we produce with that, you can keep forever. If I go to a client and that kind of a model can likely be approved. If I go to a client and say, well, I want to use this tool, but you're going to have to pay $400 a month as long as you're using the tool, or as long as you're using the software produced by the tool as a license fee, that probably won't be approved.
Just to make it clear, the tool will be free for use. Only the support will be subscription based, and probably few components only will be in the price list, but it will be usable completely for someone to build without limitations any application.
Okay, well, that sounds very promising. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question?
No, I don't see anything in the chat, but thank you very much, Costas. We really appreciate your presentation.
Thank you too for the invitation and for having me here.
Okay, Sam, you should be a presenter now, so you can show what you need to.
Good evening, everyone. Stephen and John, thank you so much for having me for the invitation. And welcome everyone to this presentation titled AI for Developers, Making Your Application Smarter with Azure AI Services. A little bit more about me. I just became a Microsoft MVP earlier this year. I am currently a tech lead at a consulting company called Jenica. You can check us out at jenica.com. And when I'm not doing anything technology related, I love to spend time with my wife and my 2 kids, watching movies, playing video games, and anything football, well, in this case, soccer related. Um, and you can connect with me at @thesoccerdev on well, X now, I guess, or Twitter. I always forget to update that slide or that icon on the slide. Also my GitHub repo where you can find some of the code that you are going to see today. And I would love to connect on LinkedIn as well in case that you have any questions about anything that you are going to see here today. So the agenda for this presentation, we are going to look at the implementation options that you have when you want to add artificial intelligence or anything machine learning related into your applications. Why do you want to use Azure AI Services? What advantages you have when you use these APIs? What are the services that are available at the moment? And then we're going to look at all those APIs in action in a few different demos. So AI or machine learning in recent years, it seems like it is everywhere. We have some sort of self-driving cars right now. We have chatbots that do customer service right now. We probably all have at least one of those Alexa or Google Home Assistant devices in our house. There's machine learning in healthcare, helping with diagnostics, and obviously in the last year or so, I actually can't remember if it's been a year or more, but ChatGPT, large language models are everywhere, and they seem to be the hot stuff right now. But when you want to add AI into your applications, there's basically 2 roads that you can take. You can either build your own model, or you can use pre-built models that are offered by Azure or AWS or Google Cloud. Now, if you decide to build your own model, there's a process that you have to go through in order to get to a point where you have some sort of API or anything that can be integrated into your application. So first of all, you have to identify the data. You have to make sure that you have the data that you're going to need in order to train that model. And sometimes you might not even get past this stage because you're not collecting enough data, or you're not collecting the data you need in order to train that model. But even if you get past that stage, then you have to collect and prepare your data. It might not be in the format that you're gonna need for it to be able to use in the training. You might have to make some calculations, maybe create some variables that are not in the raw data. So that's something that is gonna take time as well. Then you get to the point where you can train your model. You're gonna have to test it, make sure that it has it performs at a decent outcome or a decent rate, and then finally you need to deploy it. And at that point, you also have to make sure that you maintain, if you're deploying it on premises, that you maintain all the infrastructure, that you have everything up to date in order to be able to access an API or be able to access that model from other applications. So all of this is going to take time, and it is going to take resources. So those are resources that you might not have at the moment. You might not have the expertise to do that training, to do that data collection and all that data processing. But there are going to be obviously certain situations where this is the route that you're going to have to take. I just worked on a project last year where I actually had to build a machine learning model for a very specific use case. So sometimes this is the only way that you're going to have. However, there are other scenarios if you're doing image analysis, if you're doing speech to text or text to speech, or if you're dealing with what I would say, quote unquote, common problems or common machine learning scenarios, then you can go with a pre-built model, which is what Azure AI Services are. So it's a set of APIs that works in multiple scenarios. Like I said, image analysis, speech to text, translation, and we'll see the entire list in a second. These APIs are very easy to integrate with the SDKs that are available. So as you can see, if you're using any of those languages, C#, obviously, Go, Java, JavaScript, or Python, if you're using any of those, it's going to be very easy to integrate with your applications. A lot of these services have a free tier that you can use to kind of play around with it, build a proof of concept, experiment with them, maybe even have a small application up and running in the free tier, provided that it does not it doesn't have a lot of it's not using a lot of resources or it's not making a lot of calls. And also they are customizable. So a lot of these APIs or a lot of these services, they offer sort of a middle ground in between using what's out of the box and building your own model from scratch. So Vision, for example, you can create your custom models. There's a few of them where you can grab your training data, create a custom model, and make it a little bit more customized for your particular scenario. So there's a few different categories that these services fall into. So we have speech, language, vision, and decision. Oh, and we have the translator as well. So under the speech category, we have speech to text and text to speech. So if you have the requirement, or if you need to provide your users other ways to interact with your application, maybe it's from an accessibility standpoint, you need them to be able to talk to your application or interact with your application via audio. That is something that you can do very easily with these APIs. Same thing if you need the output from your application to be able to to be produced via audio, then you can use text-to-speech API as well. You can do speech translation, and you can even do a speaker recognition. So if you're transcribing videos, for example, or audios, if you have samples of the people that you want to identify in those recordings, then you're able to identify, who's speaking at this particular point. So like I said, very useful if you're transcribing audio in your application or your particular scenario. The next group of these APIs that we're going to talk about is the language APIs. So this helps you understand any text that your application is interacting. You have entity recognition. So if you have your text input, it's able to identify things like dates, names, maybe products, numbers, things like that, if you need to do some sort of analysis in your application. Sentiment analysis, if you need to be able to determine if a particular text has a negative or positive sentiment. If you're analyzing documents, letters, or if you're analyzing customer reviews, for example, something like sentiment analysis can help you do that processing in an automated fashion. We have question answering, conversational language understanding, which is it's commonly used when you create bots. So it helps you identify what your user is trying to do and is able to help your bot direct the user to the actions that the thing that they want to take. Summarization is a more recent one that was added, I believe, last year. So if you provide a text, the API is able to summarize in a certain number of lines. And then we have text analytics for health. So it's more specific to a healthcare scenario if you are working on an application in that particular industry. All right, vision is the next group. So we have the computer vision. we have custom vision, and then we have the face API. So this deals with anything that you want to do with images, whether it is text extraction, so OCR, just analysis of the images. If you want to be able to identify if there's people in a particular image or the objects that appear in an image, that's something that you can do with this API. The face API, as the name implies, if you need to do face recognition, for example, if you want to use that for authentication or some other scenario where you need to process human faces, you can use that API. It is one of the APIs that is the access is restricted, so you actually need to ask Microsoft for, you have to request access explicitly for that face API. This is because, a few years ago, I don't know if any of you heard the news or saw articles that the APIs were used by some law enforcement agencies, or they were being used in a scenario that Microsoft was not comfortable being used. So that's why it's a little bit more restricted, the access right now. You can't really just create a resource and just start using it like the other ones. Last group of APIs is the decision. So we have anomaly detector, we have content safety, and we have personalizer. So anomaly detector, if you have like data in a time series, this API would help you detect any anomalies that you have in your data. This one has an asterisk because it's going to be retired in 2026. So right now you cannot create new resources for this particular API, but anyone that is using it at the moment can still use it. I don't know what's going to replace it at the moment. I saw that maybe something in Microsoft Fabric is going to replace it, but I think there's still hasn't been an official announcement of what the actual replacement is. Content safety, if you need to do any sort of moderation in your website, maybe you're building an application that is for children's, maybe educational portal for kids, or any other application that's mostly targeted towards kids, you can put something like content safety on that API, and to make sure that any image or any text that is uploaded or that is entered in that application is appropriate for children. And finally, personalizer is it helps you create personalized experiences for your users. So the more that your user interacts with your application, it creates an experience that is more tailored towards it. Again, this has an asterisk because it is another one of those APIs that is going to be retired in a couple of years. This one I couldn't find what's going to replace it in the future, so still not sure which way it's going to go, but it is a functionality that was available at one point. Last group, translator. So as the name implies, anything that has to do with either text or document translation, and you can even create your own translator. So if it is a language that is not currently supported, you can build your own model, your own translator. If it is a very specific need that you have and is not currently supported language. All right. So these APIs that we just looked at are kind of the building blocks, or the basics that you need in order to create applications. There are other APIs that are kind of built on top of them. They use a combination of different APIs, and they're more specific towards certain business scenarios. So first we have document intelligence. So if you have any sort of workflow where you're trying to automate the document processing, so invoices, receipts, tax forms, any sort of document that you need to process in a more automated fashion, document intelligence is the API for you. At Jenica, we actually just had a couple different projects where we have a couple clients that wanted to process invoices mostly in an automated way, and document intelligence has actually been working really well for them. Immersive reader, again, if you need to be able to provide your users with the ability to the contents of the page to be read to them, again, from an accessibility standpoint, or if you have people with dyslexia that you need help with reading or teaching applications, immersive reader is something that you can use for this particular scenarios. Metrics Advisor, again, another one of those that it's in a weird situation. It's going to be retired in a couple of years. Again, I didn't see in the documentation any clear path of what you want to replace it with. But as the name implies, it just provided you with metrics on your website or your application that allow you to make decisions based on that data. It is built on top of the anomaly detector, so kind of they go hand in hand. So one is going to be retired, this one is going to be retired as well. Video indexer, again, if you're in a scenario where you have to process a video, you have to make add captions or extract insights from those videos, video indexer is the API that you want to use. Cognitive search. So if your application, you want to add a smarter search to your website, to your application, cognitive search is the API that you want to use. It's compatible with multiple data sources like SQL Server, Cosmos, and believe Azure Storage as well. So you can connect it to all those different data sources, and you can run more effective searches in your application. It is a little expensive to use that service, but I've seen some very interesting, very powerful workflows built with that. And then finally, bot service. If you need to create any sort of bot for customer service or just internal bots to answer frequently asked questions or things like that, it is a service, or that is the API that you want to use in your application. I want to make a pause real here before we continue, just to ask if there's any questions up to this point about any of the APIs that we talked about.
There's nothing in the chat.
All righty. Okay, so I'm going to talk very briefly about data privacy and security, or just touch base on a few things that I believe are important. Obviously, if you're dealing with images, maybe images of people, or if you're dealing with text that might contain sensitive information and things like that, I just wanted to touch base on how that data is handled, so that you know what to expect when you use these APIs. So obviously there's authentication. So the only way to access those APIs is with your own key. The data is encrypted at rest and in transit. Limited access features. So like I said, for example, with the Face API, you can't just use all of these services out of the box. Some of them, especially the ones that can use for, I guess, more dangerous, if you want to say, purposes, they're a little bit more restricted, and you have to actually convince Microsoft that you're not gonna use it for a bad purpose. As far as data being stored, the data is actually not stored. There's two scenarios. The data is not stored for some of these APIs, or some of them it's stored temporarily. So the image analysis, for example, it is an asynchronous operation. So you send the image, and then the results are returned after a little bit of time, and within that time frame, the results are stored. But once you once you get that information back, it's not going to be stored. It's not going to be used to train any of these APIs again. So you don't have to worry about that again if you're dealing with sensitive information, or images that you don't want to be used for any training, or you want anyone else to have access to. They're not going to be used for any of those purposes. So again, just wanted to mention it because it is something that I believe sometimes there's a concern about how our data is being used, especially with this sort of API services, or AI services, I should say. All right, That is really all I have as far as quote unquote theory of this. Most of my presentations, I like them to be a little bit more practical and just show what you can do with these APIs. So we're gonna go ahead and do a demo. So what we're gonna cover is just really quick how to create a resource. We're gonna test the APIs using what I call Studio. So a few of these APIs, Microsoft created websites where you can go and test them and see how they work before you actually write any code, which I think it's great because you don't always want to have to build a console application or a sample website in order to know if these APIs are going to work for you or not. And then we're going to look at a couple different applications and how easy it is to plug this into a website. We're going to look at vision, speech to text, language understanding, and then we're also going to look at content safety. All right, so we've all done demos in the past, and I think we all know that things can always go wrong, and a lot of times they go wrong. So in order for the demo gods to smile at me and hope that everything goes well, I'm gonna offer this little prayer to them. So let this code compile in not an hour, but a little while. Allow this application to run with speed and zest, as this will keep users glued to my test. If my code blows up in my face, do it with style and grace. And last but not least, when all is said and run, let thy requirements being correctly done. All right, so let's look at those APIs. So, first of all, so how do you create a resource for many of these APIs? So there's a bunch of these APIs can be accessed by one key. So you can create a multi-service key, or you can create keys separately. Some of the services you actually need to create key separate. So if you just want to use a multi-service key, which I believe gives you access to vision, language, I believe, I think speech to text, I can't remember all the list of them. But this is where you would go. So if you go into the Azure website, create a resource, and you search for Azure AI Services, make sure you check Azure Services only just in case. And Azure AI Services is the very first one that you want to use for that. So you click create. If you created a resource in the past in Azure, then the rest is going to be pretty simple. It's usually the same information that is required. So your resource group, the region, you give it a name, pricing tier. Like I said, a lot of these services have a free tier. In this case, because I already have a free resource somewhere in my subscriptions, the only option that I have is the standard. But like I said, you can just use the free tier to test some of these and just take them from a spin. Something that you will see a lot with these services, whether it is Azure AI or OpenAI or anything that has to do with machine learning and AI in Azure, you're going to see this responsible AI notice. Again, Microsoft is very aware of the possible misuse of this kind of technology. So they want to make sure that you're aware and that you follow what they think is the responsible use of these APIs. So you're welcome to read some of those when you create a resource. Again, pretty standard for other Azure resource. You select what kind of access you wanted to have, whether you wanted to have a system assigned identity or user assigned identity, whether you wanted to have tags, and then you click on review and create, and you get your Azure resource. So what that looks like is AI demo. This is a multi-service. So I think all the services that are listed here are the ones that this gives you access to. So speech, vision, language, decision, language, and some of the decision give you access. And document intelligence, which we're gonna see in a little bit. All right. So Going over here to Azure AI Studio, again, this is something that Microsoft recently released. It's still, this particular one is still in preview, so it's very relatively new. But over here, if where it says all Azure AI, if you click on that, you will see that there's other studios for some of the APIs that we talked about during the presentation. So we're going to start with the language studio, and you can see here, it already has my my resource loaded. I guess language is one that you need a specific resource for. So if you scroll down here, you have different options of what you want to test. So you can try summarize information. You can try to extract information. So that's what we're gonna do right now, just to see what that looks like a little bit. So let's do the named entities. And the cool thing or the great thing about this is that if you don't have data handy that you want to test it with, there's already data here that you can use. So we're going to choose this one right here. If you click on that, it loads it up here. You can select different models if that's something that is available that you want to do. You can do it in different languages. So we'll test that in a second. And then here you can see it is using the free tier resource for this particular test. So if you run it, and these are all the entities that I was able to identify. So it was able to identify that sir is a person type. Same with madam. It's able to identify Mateo Gomez as a person. So it's able to deduce that this is the name of a person. So the entity is person. You can see the different degrees of confidence as well of what it thinks that, if it thinks that it identifies as a person, how confident it is that that it is actually a person. You can see really cool things like Thursday of last week. It identifies that as a date part of the date time. So you have categories and subcategories that you can drill into if you need to do that as well. So here's another example. So under the category location, there's a subcategory of structural. So restaurant falls in under that category, and it actually has a confidence of 95% that that is a location. So really great things. Phone number. So if you need to do any sort of processing with this, we'll see that in an application a little bit as a particular scenario. But to me, this is really cool stuff. Down here, you can see where in the text it identify that, and you can see the information about the entity value, again, the confidence that it was able to identify that. Another great thing here is that you have the resource, and then you can copy your keys from here. If you say, hey, this looks great, now I'm actually gonna build a small application, or I am convinced that this is gonna help us in a particular scenario, you can copy your keys and your endpoints straight from here. You don't have to go back to Azure. And you can also see some, I think this one has it, but some of these also have sample code that you can just copy and paste if you just want to do that. You can look at the results in JSON format. So if you were calling the API just as a regular REST API, this is what that result will look like. Again, with category, the confidence score, and it tells you, where in the text this is located. So again, at least to me, this is really cool stuff. You can look at samples on GitHub as well if you want to look at some other examples or some other scenarios. So let's look at the personal information. Let's see what it does here. So let's choose a medical report, and let's see what is able to identify. So it's able to identify that, for example, this is a European Union passport number, I'm assuming. So with a pretty good degree of accuracy. So if you have to do any scrubbing of the text, you can do something like that as well. So let me turn this on. So again, this is on the application itself, but this is something that you would have to implement on your end if you wanted to scrub some of this personal information so that it's not visible to whoever is trying to access it afterwards. Or if you need to scrub it and then store some of the information, that's again something that you can do very, very easily. So we go back out here. Let me look at, so some of the new, this summarized text, like I said, is new. So if you have a text that you want to summarize, you are able to select how many lines of text you actually want to summarize this to. So that is the, I think this is text from a case study, I believe, or at least from what it looks like. So if we click run, we said that we only want 10 sentences out of this. And if I click run, this one's taking a little longer. There you go. It produces a summary of that particular text. So abstracted summary, so just a basic summary of the text, and then over here on the left is broken down by the number of sentences that we asked from the API. If you look down here, it gives you the rank score. So how high was a particular sentence ranked, and that tells you why a particular sentence was chosen versus another one. So again, very, very interesting, very cool, very powerful stuff that you can use with just calling an API. All right. Any questions about this particular API? I do want to make sure that I keep moving because last time I gave this presentation, I actually ran out of time. So I want to make sure that I keep moving. But before I do, any questions about the language API?
Nope, nothing in the chat.
All righty. So we will continue. So we'll look at Speech Studio real quick. Here you go. So again, this is a resource that is using that multi-service resource that I created. So again, let's go over here. So let's do real-time speech to text. Hello, Greater Lansing user group. All right. Not a super difficult example, but you can see that it does a pretty good job about taking the input that it has from the microphone and translating that into text. You can do certain things, I believe. I don't see it here anymore. Hang on, let me click on advanced options. So let me turn language identification. See if that, all right, let me. Hola a todos, espero que estén disfrutando esta presentación. All right, pretty decent job. It kind of messed it up right here with this particular 2 words, that doesn't make any sense and it's not what I said. But it's still, pretty decent job at taking that audio, taking what I said, and putting it in and translating it into text. I don't know why. Oops. Oh, I see. I think, yeah, because I didn't select Spanish, it didn't identify the language. But again, it is something that it would have been able to do if I had selected Spanish down here as an option for languages. So, by the way, any language that you see in this list is the language that is supported. So, as you can see, it's a pretty big, pretty comprehensive list of languages that are supported. Again, down here, you have the option to go to the quick start where you can see sample code in different languages. You can go see sample of samples on GitHub. You can look at common scenarios that are currently being used right now. So captioning, call center transcription. So these are 2 scenarios that they have on the page in that you might find as well in your applications. Any questions about the speech service? Again, we're going to see this in an application as well. But before I move on, I want to make sure that you don't have anything that any questions, anything else you want to see?
Sam, I got a question. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know that the large language models do some of that translation. Is there a way to like get the best of both worlds, or there's like an implementation where you're using this to do most of the work and maybe the LLM cleans it up?
Yeah, you can. That's the great thing about these, that you can chain them or you can put these together. But for sure, you can do a little bit of pre-processing with the speech API on the front, and then send the. So one thing that you can do, for example, is capture the audio, put that into text, and maybe send that as a prompt to your LLM. So that's just one scenario that I can think of that you can definitely put in your workflow. But you can definitely put them together and they can work together.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All righty. So let's look at Vision Studio real quick. We'll do Vision, we'll do the document, and then we'll move on to the application. So optical character recognition, you can do spatial analysis. This is another one that is a little bit more restricted, and it requires a lot of processing power if you want to use something like that. But if you want to do something like this, retrieval and summary, if you want to count how many people are in a particular area, if you have cameras that you're feeding that video to the API, if you want to detect when people cross a line, a little bit more 1984, or I don't know if anyone here has seen there's a TV show a while ago called Person of Interest. This is what this API always reminds me of. But if that's the scenario that you need to work with, those are the kind of things that you can do with these APIs. We are going to look at a little bit simpler scenario. So we are going to do pass it already. No, I don't want to do custom. I just want to do, there you go, detect common object. So very simple scenario. So we are gonna, again, you have sample images that you want to use. You have different options if you want to train your model. So if you're doing, for example, if you want to identify just a certain object, or you want to focus on just identifying certain things on images, you can build your custom model. If you're doing quality control, for example, that you want to be able to identify, if you say, these products pass quality control, these ones don't. If you want to automate those sort of flows, you can create your own custom model to do that. Here, we'll just do a basic recognition. So you can see here, it was able to identify footwear. It was able to identify a person, a laptop that people are seating. 2 more people would, you can see that there's different degrees of confidence about how many people there are in the image, and then it's able to identify a table. You can do certain things from there, like here, or at least when you're testing it here, that you only want to see results that have a certain threshold as far as the score, the confidence score goes. So, you don't want to mislabel images, or you don't want to look at things if you're not if the model it's not super sure that it was able to identify them. So again, same thing as the other ones. You can look at sample code down on the bottom. You can look at you can go to the documentation from here. Let's see what it sees on this one. So it sees a skateboard, and it says a person, pretty high degree of confidence. It's an image that doesn't have a lot going on, so it looks a lot cleaner. It's a lot easier for the API to be able to identify those kind of things. There were some functionality that I don't see from a lifetime in the site, but let's see. Let's take this one. Let's see what the cropping. So you can see that it does a smart crop of the image. You can change the parameter, and you can do this in your applications as well. So if you're creating an image library, for example, you want to create thumbnails, this is another option where you can do something like that, or you can use this API to do something like that. But again, this is great thing for you to use if you just want to take these APIs for a spin. If you don't want to actually spend, I don't know, 15 minutes or an hour creating a console application or a website to figure out if it's going to work for you or not. These are great tools for you to have and for you to use. One more thing to call out is that some of these APIs are available as containers as well. So if you have the need to do some of this work on premises because you're restricted, maybe data governance or some kind of security, some of these are available as containers that you can run on premises, and you can look at that in here as well. So here it's telling you that you can use this API on the cloud, or you can use them on Azure IoT. I can't remember off the top of my head which one is available. I believe the OCR. I think the OCR is available as a container, not caption. Spatial analysis, I'm pretty sure that one is. Yeah, so you can see here that this API, for example, the spatial analysis, is available as a Docker container, and it's also available as in Azure IoT. It's not available in the cloud, so this is something that you wouldn't be able to call like the other ones that we're gonna see in a minute. But just another call out if that is something that you need to be aware of. Okay, any questions about the vision before we move on to the last one, and then we move on to the application itself? I don't think there's anything in the chat.
Not that I've seen.
Yeah, I do see the comment that yeah, definitely punctuation is it's one place where some of these models are still lacking. So I definitely agree with you on that. All right, document intelligence. We're just gonna look at this one real quick, and if we have time, we'll come back for Content Safety Studio. So this is one that actually at Jenica we've used a couple times with a few different clients in the last few months. So this is specifically for documents. So and it is information extraction from documents. So you have some general models that you can just use for reading, extracting layout and text, and just anything general documents. And then you have something more specific for certain scenarios. So if you're trying to automate, if accounting, for example, you're trying to automate the way that your invoices are imported into your accounting software or some other application that you have in your organization, you can use this API to extract the information from those documents and automatically upload it to that system in behind the scenes without having someone type the information or without having to do any manual processing on it. And I guess my prayer didn't work because we can't access that right now. There you go. All right, just had to reload. So let me look at, so let me run we'll just run this sample real quick. So you see here, it's a sample invoice, but it has a lot of the information that you would find in any other invoices. This is actually one API or one model that we've used, or the model that we've used the most in the past on the projects that we worked on with our clients. And if you click on run analysis, over here, you can see anything that has a rectangle or it has this sort of highlighting, it means that it's able to identify that particular piece of data. So over here on the right side, you can see that the document type is an invoice, and it's able to identify all this information. So amount due, billing address, all the addresses in the invoice that was able to identify. You also see again the confidence score, so that if you have a low confidence score, maybe you want to route this particular invoice to a human so that they can actually do the processing. But most of the time, it performs really well with extracting information. You can see that it extracted line items as well. So down here, all the details, all the amounts for the different items in the invoice, it was able to identify. Here are the different tables that it was able to identify. You can look at the result in JSON if that is something that you need a little bit more detail, a little bit more information of what's going on behind the scenes. And you have code that you can literally copy paste into an application if you want to start using this API. The only options that you have right now is Python, JavaScript, and C#, but this is literally a code that is copy and paste. It's ready to go, and you can use in your application. So there's a few different models here. So invoices, receipts, identity documents, if you deal with driver's licenses, passports, health insurance cards. There's some specific tax forms, if that's something that you need to process. Contracts, if you're working for your client is, for example, a legal firm and you want to extract information from contracts, this API can help you do that. Or if you need to process business cards, that's another model that is available for you. And on top of that, you can also create your own model. So if your template is very specific, or the documents that you're processing follow a very a format that is unique to your organization, you can create your model very, very easily as well. I see something.
It looks like we have 2 questions in the chat there, Sam.
Yeah. So does the text have to be visually recognized in the PDF before the text is interpreted? So do you mean like actually legible, or how clear is the image? Does the image have to be? Is that the question? No. So this model, it just out of the box, it works without creating without requiring a visual model. So this is actually using that vision model. It's built on top of that, so it automatically recognizes the text that you have in your documents. So you don't have to create something specific for that. Did that answer your question? Yeah, and if the PDF it's only like a scan, if it's not an actual document, it's also able to recognize that as well. All right. Any other questions before we move on? All right. So let's look at a little bit of code. And we're going to start with the content safety since we didn't really look at the content safety studio. So this is the API that I mentioned that you can use to do content moderation if your application, if you need to restrict, the content in it, so that if it is a website or an application that is geared towards kids, make sure that the content in there is clean, is safe for kids. This is an API that you can use for that, and very easily you can use this APIs just by adding the NuGet packages to your application. So all of these APIs, they have NuGet packages that you can use for coding. That's opening. Let's go back to the code. So for example, for this content safety API, the package is azure.ai.contentsafety. This is a new service. There used to be another API, I can't remember the name, that was doing a similar job, but this is actually new. And content safety, I believe, is also used on top of OpenAI or Azure OpenAI to also do like moderate what results come back. So kind of link to the question that we had earlier, if we can combine these, you definitely can do that. So here, the way that I am accessing those, I have those keys in a Azure app configuration. So I'm just getting the keys from there, and then I'm just creating a client with those endpoints and keys. So here I'm creating a content safety client, and I'm also creating a block list client. So a block list, as as the name suggests, you can have, apart from the terms and everything that the model recognizes out of the box, you can add your own list that you want to block for text. Like if there's something very specific that you want to make sure that is blocked from your website or from the content that you're displaying, you can specify that list. So I create my clients there, and over here, the only thing that I need to do is if I want to analyze an image and make sure that is safe, I just call the content safety client, and I call the analyze image async. I pass the image or the content of the image, and then I get back the response on 4 different categories. What's the level for that particular content. So we'll see that in a second. But you see here, all just with these lines, you're able to determine whether that particular content should be displayed in your application or not. So you could even do this in the background, like if you have a bunch of images that you need to process or you need to check that they are safe for upload, you can do that behind the scenes with just very few lines of code. Same thing with text. So if you receive a text in your application, I'm here adding the list that I created of specific terms that I want to block. I am specifying if I want 4 severity levels or 8 severity levels. So if you want a more granular output of how severe the risk is, you can change that. You can toggle that if you want to do that. But again, just these lines of code, and you're able to determine whether a text is safe or not in those different categories. So let's see what that looks like over here. So I'm going to start with an image. I don't know if anyone here plays video games or not, but you played Mortal Kombat, you know that that's not suitable for a lot of ages. But you can see here the different categories that the API identifies. So hate, self-harm, sexual and violence. Here it's saying that there's just 2 severity, I think is 2 in a 4-point scale of severity of violence for this particular image, which, you know, it doesn't have any of the other ones. But then you can take that result and say, like, anything that is over 1, for example, or anything that is over 2, I want to block it. I don't want to display it on my application. It has nothing to do, you know, with what we're trying to do. Very easy, super quick, super simple to do. So I don't know if that's the exact quote, but I don't know if anyone identifies the quote, but let's see if we run that. By default, I think I have it on 8 levels, but you can see that this particular quote is saying that there's a severity of 3 on the hate category, and that there's a severity of 5 in the violence category. Now, you obviously, when you use these APIs, you don't have access to the model behind, so you know you just have to take the results. I don't know why this particular one has such a high high score for violence, but you know that is something that you're gonna have to do there. Now for the block term, so there's no blocked terms. I think I only added one word to the block list there, but you can run those in tandem. So here you can see that even though developer is not in any of the categories that come out of the box, because I said that is a block term, it is returning it in the results, and I am able to say, okay, even though you said that this is okay, I actually, for my particular scenario, I actually want to block this particular text or this particular this particular input. Any questions about content safety? Or about how to use the APIs? We're going to see another application in a second, but before I move on, I just want to double check. All right, so go over here. I'm gonna run this one now. So this one, this application that I'm gonna show in a little bit, it has a little bit more. It has, I think, 4 different APIs that it's using across the application. Oh man. There it goes. Okay. So we have the speech API behind the scenes. We have the vision. We have the translate. I didn't get the immersive reader to work, so unfortunately we can't look at that right now. But let's do speech to text first. So this is actually combining speech to text and language understanding for the navigation here. So if I click here, analyze image. So it took that audio, it translated into text. I fed that into the language understanding, and then it's able to identify. I have some intents on the language understanding side. So that particular phrase matches the image analysis. So in the code, it was able to route me over there. We'll look at the code in a second. So for image analysis, there's right now there's a version that is in preview, which is version 4, which has a a lot of different functionality than the previous one. I've seen it change a lot in the last couple weeks. So some of the stuff that I show you and some of the code, it might not end up being the same. So just an FYI, if you're interested on using that API, that it might not look the same when you go in and use it. So we're gonna use this one real quick. All right. So you're able to identify a few different features when you analyze an image. Here I'm extracting tags. I'm extracting objects. I'm doing dense captioning, and then I'm extracting caption itself. So here you can see that it has all these tags. So person, man, human face, clothing, with a different degree of confidence on what I was able to identify. All of them are pretty good. Sports uniform, athletic game, stadium, fan, all of those match what you see in the picture. And then for the objects, it identified 4 people in the image, which is, I highlighted here on the rectangles. You can't kind of see the person here. Obviously, this one is very easily identifiable. I'm not sure what it was looking at right there, and I didn't pull the confidence for this particular one, but I guess there's a person somewhere in the background. I'm also not pulling it here, but I might run it on debug in a minute. But it's able to identify also the text in here. And we can see that in a second. In the past, in the previous version of this API, the analyzed image and the analyzed text were different calls in the API. Now you just call analyze image and it returns any objects that are in the image, but it also returns any text that is included in the image. Another thing that is new for this version of the API for the image analysis is what's called dense captioning. So before you only had one simple caption for the image. Here you have kind of a more specific captions for your image if that's something that you want to use. So man holding a trophy, a person holding a trophy, a gold medal with a star, a close-up of a man's face, a close-up of a man and a woman. I don't think there might be a woman in the background. But if you need more captions, or if you, for example, again, you're in a situation where you need to build a media library and you want to use these captions as search prompts, or you want to tag the image with those captions so that it can be searched later, those are generated automatically for you. So really great stuff to see. So what that looks in the code. So image, come on. All right. So again, you just create your client. You only need to pass your endpoint and your key. You create your client, and then you can call. You can see here these are the old methods, because I still have both versions of the API working in the application. Like I said, you can specify all different features that you want to identify in your image. So here I'm basically identifying everything since it's the demo, but you can be a little bit more granular with what you want to be able to identify. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that I'm pulling the objects, and within that, it's also gonna identify people, but you can also identify people. And from what I've seen on running different images between these two is that obviously the people is more fine-tuned to finding people. So for example, back here, you'll see that there's you can see a lot more people in the image than just the 4 that it identified. I think with this same image, the people results came back with like 30 something people. So I don't know if there's that many in the image, but that's just to give you an idea that that if you need if you need to focus more on the people, these are the features and these are the results that you need to focus. There's some additional options, the language that you want to identify, which right now English is the only one. And if something that you want to use, gender neutral captions, right now I have it as false, but if you just want the captions to just say a person instead of a man or a woman, that is something that you have an option to do. But again, the code to call the API itself, very, very simple. You provide the image or the data for the image, the visual features that you want to identify, and any other options that you want to provide. You call analyze, and then you get a result. And that result is going to have any feature that you said you want to identify, you will get a result for that. And then I'm just parsing that and converting it into a different object. But most of the code or the majority of the code is in just getting the result or parsing that result in an object or in a format that I am using to present it. But so you see the objects, it doesn't just tell you what object it identified, it tells you where it is in the image so that you can do something like what I did to circle that particular object or that particular person. So you can see here, it identifies people as well. It's completely separate functionality. So let me go over here. I think it's in this one. No. So speech service. So this is what I am using. There you go. So in that feature that I use to navigate the application using voice. So when I click on that microphone, I just call this method called recognize from mic, and it immediately starts to listen to the audio from my microphone. Then I send that text over to the language understanding, which I already have it built to with a few what's called intents. So if it says, oh, it's the analyzed intent, or this person is trying to analyze an image, then I navigate to that. If it says import, then it navigates to that other page. So you can change or you can mix and match the services in really cool ways to build very powerful applications. So here, recognize from mic, I create my client, and then I just listen to the default microphone input, and then it automatically gets the text out of that. So very few lines of code, and you have a very powerful functionality added into your application. Right. So that is another thing that I have here. So I have some recipes. My wife has some recipes that she has, handwritten recipes. So something that I've been playing with, and I haven't had a chance to work a little bit more. But what I wanted to use this APIs for and see how they would do is take those handwritten recipes and see if I could extract the ingredients and the preparation instructions just with these APIs and a little bit of logic. So you can see here on the top we have different ingredients, and the basic logic that I'm using here is or the flow that I'm using is I'm taking the image, I'm extracting the text, and then I'm sending that to that entity recognition API that we saw in the studio, and I'm saying if that particular text has a number and a product entity, then that means that it is an ingredient. Otherwise, it is part of the preparation. So for example, here it says all the ingredients that I was able to identify with that logic is 1 3/4 pound cube apples, salt, blah, blah, blah. So all these ingredients are the ones that I was able to identify. And then preparation, it put the name of the recipe in the preparation because it doesn't follow the other rule. But everything else, it pulled the preparation items in there. So again, it's not infallible, and that's not the best logic that you could use. But very simple logic, very, very primitive logic, so very, very interesting use case that you can use on your applications as well. So let's look at that flow real quick. So that one, where is that? Import. All right. So import the recipe. I am extracting the text, like I said, from that particular image, and then I'm just going. Where is my? There you go. So I'm extracting the text, and then for all the lines of text that are identified in that particular image, I'm calling this recognize entities, and then I'm getting the the category for that particular entity, and then based on that, I'm saying that if it has a quantity and it has a product, then it is going to be ingredients. Otherwise, we add it to the preparation, and then I return that. So again, very few lines of code, and I'm just doing something that with a little bit more work could do something as as cool or as great as taking something handwritten and do a little bit processing with it. Okay, so translate. I can. Think I set it up to translate to Spanish. Yeah, so it's using so it's able to detect the language that I enter is English, and then it translates that text to Spanish, which might a little bit different, but it was able to translate it, and it was able to translate it even with that accent, which is pretty cool. And I actually noticed if it was doing that in the past, but very easy, very, very quick translation as well. Again, the code that you need to do something like that is it's crazy simple. 3 lines, no, that's the authentication when I'm creating a client. But here you specify what language you want to translate to and the text that you want to translate, and then that's all you need to do. You can actually translate into multiple languages. So here, since I knew that it was only one language that I specified that I want to translate to, then I'm just taking the first detected language. But you could say, hey, translate this particular text to Spanish and French, for example, and you would get those translations at the same time. I think that is. I want to pause right there just to see if there's any other questions. There's a couple more things that we can look at if we have time, but I believe that we're pretty close to it. Any questions about any of these APIs? Anything that you saw today, or maybe something that you didn't see and you would like to see, and that we can look at in the next couple minutes? I don't see anything in the chat. So Steven, I think that's it for me, and okay, or unless you guys have any other questions.
Sam, I do want to ask you something. There's like, I'm sure you know about AI fundamentals and stuff. What are the ways for people to, like, if they have an afternoon or an hour or a day, to get hands-on, to get like a feel for these things easily? Like, what do you like to show people, depending on how much time they have?
I definitely want to. The reason why I started with those studios is that's where I would start. just because you, like I said, you can test those and see what capabilities they have without actually getting into any coding. And from there, you can go to the code and actually write your own applications if you want. Microsoft Learn has also a lot of great modules if you want to actually go behind the scene and start to learn a little bit more deeper on how these APIs work and build your own custom models, for example. So those are two resources where you can actually get started with that.
Excellent, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Actually, one more thing. Just want to put this up again. Oops. There you go. Yeah, Dave, and if you're interested or if you have any other questions, feel free to connect on LinkedIn, and I can send you a little bit more resources of where you can go if you're interested in learning a little bit more or playing with any of these APIs a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up with you. I got some stuff I've looked at, and you're working with it. You're building out this, and I'm just kind of exploring it. So I definitely would like to follow up with you. Reach out.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, would love to connect.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Sam? Okay, I don't think so. Thank you very much, Sam. That was a great presentation. I learned a lot tonight.
Thanks again for having me. Appreciate it.
So I dropped a link in the chat there. That is the presentation survey. So if everyone could please fill out with their honest opinions on tonight's presentation. Remember, all feedback received is anonymous. So please give us all the feedback, good, bad, or otherwise. I will also send that out via email as well if you didn't happen to see it in the chat.